Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. We are going to continue today on our series about getting through the eye of the needle. I'm not sure how many more I want to emphasize because it seems that the same issue about the rich man getting through the eye of the needle is the same with every example I'm bringing. And I probably could bring about 20 more videos on the same example. So I'm going to take it easy on you. We're going to make a shift in transition, but for this one, I felt very compelled to bring the point home very clearly to all of us that, the Bible says that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. This is not a series about, punishing the rich man. This is not about me sort of poo-pooing down the people that are in a position of wealth. On the contrary, I actually have spent a good amount of time with people of wealth, and not only in a learning capacity, but also just friendship and also an advisory capacity, is working with people that you and I would never, approach on a regular day. These relationships came to me through over the years in my practice. They came to me through referral and friendship. So I was very blessed to learn even beyond my own business experience, where achievement was, where the attitude and the character. And I'll tell you, for the ones that are worthy listening to, I was very impressed by the amount of quiet humility that they walk in. I like to call these people eagles because they fly at such a higher altitude and their eyes are very sharp. They can be very discerning. But for the rest of us who find ourselves in business and in positions of faith, this is a very important conversation because there is a lot of prosperity snake oil being flung out there that I just really want to come up against and say, listen, it can be done better. And I don't want you to lose out on the most important aspects of prosperity in life under God, right? So I am not picking on people of wealth, or am I picking on people in business? I'm not here to try to correct. In fact, the balance of the discussion that I've been trying to have here is you have a place and God has a purpose for you. And there is honor waiting for you if you are honorable. If you conduct yourself with respect, you can be respected if you're respectable. So, and the same goes with the person of the cloth, right? The spiritual leadership. There is something here that I want to try to balance out here, because there is this, and I re-emphasize this, there is this sort of a brotherly wrestling match between people of spiritual leadership and people of business leadership. They're both necessary to each other in accordance with God's plan and God's heart in the world. They need each other. They just sometimes don't recognize that. They don't recognize that, the businessman isn't just for paying for everything, right? And I do this because it's like uttering, milking a cow. And the spiritual guy isn't necessarily, there to take all the abuse and criticism, right? So I don't know. These discussions are almost completely unscripted, so forgive me on that. But the idea, I think you get the idea. There's a struggling match going on. And my concern is I don't want one to think that they can use and abuse the other. Okay, so there is a balance, and there is the heart of God in relationship, because the people in the church are the recipients, good, bad, and ugly, of good behavior, good decisions, bad decisions, the consequences of bad attitudes, and the ugly, which is what we all can fall into. And so I'm going to highlight again today what this major issue is. If you want to know how to get through the eye of the needle, if you're concerned in your prayer life on what does that mean, and you're a person in business, I want to comfort you but encourage you today. And then we'll move on further into the series. I'm not going to delay in the Old Testament because there's way too many examples. So I'm going to change the tone next video, is what I'm saying. So let's start here with our content. What is the definition of humility? Humility, now I'm using the same dictionary references for all of these words, so the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Um, they simply put that freedom from pride or arrogance, the quality or state of being, right? So the idea there, freedom from pride or arrogance, which actually is undergirded, in my opinion, with the concept of contentment. So when Paul basically says, I've learned what it means to be content, whether I'm rich, whether I'm poor, whether I'm healthy, whether I'm sick, you know, if I walk in abundance or I don't, that does not determine the quality of my eternal state of well-being, my destiny with God, my love for Jesus. It doesn't affect it. So regardless of what's happening in the world, will it affect you thinking that you have, something to prove, something to hide, or something to lose? Are you holding tight, or do you trust the Lord with your life and quality therein? So this is humility. And, I don't need to go deep into this other than it is a matter of understanding where you are in position to the Lordship of Jesus. Okay? And the relationship of others. So when it comes to relating to people in the church, it's less about position and it's more about posture. It's more about, I'm here to provide benefit to my brothers and sisters. Jesus did say, they will know me by your love for one another. So the greatest witness you can give into the world is, how do you learn and how do you govern yourself in relationship to one another, uh, brothers and sisters in the church first, and then your neighbor, loving your neighbor as yourself. So this is where humility finds its grounding. It finds its foundation, right? Okay, I hope that makes sense. But let's move on. I need to talk about what the difference is between humility and humiliation. Just because it has the same kind of root word, um, it doesn't necessarily mean in all applications they're related. I think one is more of a noble understanding of it, but the other one is, well, you can suffer humiliation under unjust leadership, unjust authority, or you can suffer humiliation with regards to, um, social conduct, bullying for one, or people that are mismanaging their role in authority. So what is humiliation? To humiliate is a verb. To reduce someone to a lower position in one's own eyes or others' eyes, to make someone ashamed or embarrassed. So humiliation is basically, you're bringing somebody low at their expense. You're creating a position where they are brought low in the sight of others, and usually it's to make yourself look good, or you're spinning something at somebody else's expense to make you look better, right? Or you look like you're the righteous one. So when you behave like that, obviously, the Lord sees everything in our hearts. You have something to hide or something to lose if you're behaving and walking in that sort of attitude. Oftentimes, when people are walking in insecurity, they will tend to make a spin or a story at somebody else's expense. But let me move on to one more thing here. And I wasn't going to put this in today, but I really think it has its place. The word contempt. Well, contempt, a feeling of intense dislike for someone or something regarded as unworthy of respect or approval, disdain. So, what does pride do? If you look at the biblical story of the fall of Lucifer, Satan, you'll understand that he walked with pride. He walked with comparison. He set himself up trying to be equal to God. And I'm just paraphrasing. You can look up the scripture for yourself. But one thing that he carries, and in life or in this world, being God of this world, is a disdain or a contempt for humanity. He has a contempt because man and woman were created in the image of God. Satan or Lucifer was not created in the image of God. Even a razor thin slice of the shadow of God is much more. Okay? So if you understand this envy that the enemy carries, you can understand what contempt is, and then you can recognize it when people have a superiority complex, or they gotta puff themselves up, that kind of thing. A feeling of intense dislike for someone or something regarded as unworthy of respect. You are lower than me. Kind of sounds like the act of humiliation, right? The humiliating behavior. So we're not taught by Jesus to behave that way. To be humble is not necessarily to make myself a doormat. To be humble is to be gratefully and happily serve the best interests of others, first within the church, right? Just some food for thought there. So I got one more word for you. Hubris. Hubris, it says as a basic, definition, exaggerated pride or self-confidence equaling arrogance. So the key word there is exaggerated, puffed up. Now, I've often said it is not a sin to have a confident or strong personality. That's anybody that's going to automatically try to downgrade you for being a confident person, saying that you walk in arrogance, that usually is their insecurity in comparison. They don't have the strength that you have or the decisiveness that you have, so therefore they have to attack, right? They have to try to bring people down to their place, and they usually do it by spin, by story, by gossip, by attack, to bring them equal to their own insecurity. Hubris is that exaggerated. So the enemy, Lucifer, had hubris. He had an exaggerated sense of self-importance, right? Which comes into arrogance, which we've talked before on this channel. But hubris, one thing I want to kind of illustrate, and forgive me, I'm going to have to read from these notes. Hubris comes from the ancient Greece. It's like a Greek tragedy almost. And we're going to get into the biblical example here. But it states here, English picked up both the concept of hubris and the term for that particular brand of cockiness from the ancient Greeks, who considered hubris a dangerous character flaw capable of provoking the wrath of the gods. In classical Greek tragedy, hubris was often a fatal shortcoming that brought about the fall of a tragic hero. And typically, overconfidence led to the hero to attempt to overstep the boundaries of human limitations and assume godlike status. In response, the gods inevitably humbled the offender with a sharp reminder of human mortality. Take, for example, the story of Phaethon, the mortal son of the sun god Helios. In his hubris, Phaethon drives his father's sun chariot into the heavens, but loses control of the horses. The chariot begins to scorch the earth, and Zeus strikes Phaethon down with a thunderbolt. Now, I understand we're talking about Greek mythology, but the point still stands, is that hubris pushes a person's ego past the point of humility, past the point of a reality in comparison or relationship to other people, to the point where they stand on a precipice of danger. Hence my statement in the beginning that humility can be taught or it can be shown. So, in this case here, humility was taught, which means, when I'm saying it can be shown or it can be taught, I'm saying it can be shown through humble observance and, receiving the message, opening the ears and the eyes and going, I understand. I have ears to hear, therefore I am listening to your word, O God. Or it can be taught through crushing experience. So this man's humility, or this person's humility, was taught through crushing experience. So don't wish for people who you deem to be proud or arrogant or wherever they are at. Don't wish for them to come under judgment, because in our frailty, we can as well judge them in our own arrogance, right? So we it's like my youth pastor used to say. He said, you're humble and you're proud of your own humility. So it's like, you can't win, right? You just can't come to a solid place on it. But it is a forever eternal walk in relationship to God. And sometimes it does take tragedy, or it takes something to crush us in order for us to awaken to the presence of God, our place under God, under Jesus' guidance. And these are some really strong, definitive terms when it comes to getting through the eye of the needle. So if you find yourself in this place, please understand these words are here as almost a cautionary set of terms. So let me give you a cautionary tale. In Judges chapter 16, 13 to 16, we have the story of Samson. Now, I've been thinking for a little while on this, because I don't want to get it all off on a tangent or whatever. But there is a principle, like Phaethon. There's a principle here that needs to be understood and almost universally applied. Samson, if you read the story, he was he's a pretty proud guy, and he mocked people, and he was testing the spirit, as it were. And what happened was, first of all, he lost his first wife. Secondly, he comes across Delilah. Delilah is coaxing and trying to get out of him his secret to his strength. So you can read it, chapter 16, but I want to focus on, for the sake of time, verse 13. Delilah then said to Samson, all this time you've been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied. Now, granted, she is trying to deceive him, right? She's trying to coax him out and cause an exposure of his frailty. And so he replied, if you weave 7 braids in my head into the fabric of the loom and tighten it with the pin, I'll become weak as any other man. So while he was sleeping, in other versions it says, so Delilah lulled him to sleep. Delilah took the 7 braids and wove into the fabric and tightened with a pin. And again she called to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He awoke from his sleep and pulled the pin out of the loom with the fabric. Then she said to him, how can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? You hear the manipulation here. This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me, and I haven't told me the secret to your great strength. With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. Now, this is a man who walked in his pride, right? It is what it is, right? He was strong, and the presence of the Lord was on him. So it's easy to get comfortable or familiar with that, right? So he had told her everything. In another version, New King James, it says he shared his heart with her. No razor has ever been used on my head, he said, because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. So without getting too deep into all the theological aspects, here's an application. My strength relies on one hinge point. And this is where the downfall of the wealthy man comes is we have one solid thing that we stand on, but if it's taken away, everything comes to naught. Everything falls, right? And such is the folly of thinking that you can take it all with you, right? You can't take it with you. So, verse 18, when Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word again to the Philistines, come back once more. He has told me everything. So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands. Here you go. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair and began to subdue him, and his strength left him. Okay? Now, here's what I really want to show you. So she called Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. So walking in his arrogance, in his over assurity, in his hubris, he basically said, it's just going to be like everything else, and I'm just going to do what I've always done. Verse 21, then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. Binding him with bronze shackles, they sent him to grind the grain in the prison. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. Now we understand that Samson got his revenge, because I know the scriptural lawyers are going to look at that. Oh, but James, you forget. The object of the lesson is we get too comfortable and familiar in our own successes, and we forget the fact that as it affects other people around us, sometimes it's going to affect us to a point where God removes the blessing. God will remove his approval, or he'll remove his covering over that person, right? So I saw a video last night about an empress of Rome who her husband was sort of underappreciated. He was not a strong man, but he needed a wife and they needed heirs. So he was 50 and he took an empress that was 15. By the time she was 25, he had been gone away to do his job and take care of the kingdom, the empire. And she was basically, for the sake of her own titillation, she went out and behaved like a harlot. She behaved like a woman of the evening. She even went into the brothels disguised, and she basically debased herself. And it eventually caught up to her, where she would be playing these elite games where when you have everything, what else do you do but become, corrupted, and you become incredibly sinful to the point where I couldn't describe to you what she got into, how she coerced and basically moved senators into blackmail, and how she did this. And so this does this sound familiar to you? There's all kinds of elitism things going on here that's being exposed. Well, this empress did just that, and then she got caught. And when the Roman guards who were loyal to the emperor came and arrested her, she begged for her life. The point I'm making in this real historical story is that she basically thought she could do anything she wanted without consequence, without a ripple effect. Now, the cautionary tale here is evident. And you say, well, getting through the eye of the needle, I better pay attention to this. Okay? Man of God, pay attention to this, because in your own context, you can behave the same. And so with that, I'm going to leave it. The next video I'm going to do is going to be changing the tone. I'm going to be now, how can I build upon this? How can I build upon humility? How can I build upon purpose and achievement? What can I do to be, as I read before in Timothy, let the wealthy do good works. Okay, well, let's see what we can find out. All right. I hope this helps you. I hope it gives you peace. And stay tuned. We're going to come out with a really good one next time. And yeah, feel free to write your comments below. Like, subscribe, and share these videos out if you find them to be a benefit or helpful. And don't be afraid to email me if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments. I'd love to engage with you in conversation. All right. Take care.